They called him the Diesel.
Crank up that diesel.
He leaned across the table and he goes, "You need to get me back there. I'll make you famous."
And to Riggins, good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone.
It's Riggo, the Diesel.
Here we go. Welcome to Riggo the Diesel. This is our 26th episode. I am John Riggins, Larry Michael sitting across from me, the voice and a lot more for the Washington Redskins.
This is hump day of the series, of the 52-week series. You said 26, right?
Yeah, I believe.
Wow. Time flies.
God, I never thought of it that way, Larry, but you're 100% right.
We're going to have to extend this, huh?
Oh, I think this is definitely this is an overtime situation. And by the way, we also should introduce the T-Cat is in the studio this morning.
He's here today.
Yeah, but he's got laryngitis. He can't talk.
Top of the morning, guys.
Ooh,
that's rough.
The coach is back.
That's rough. Where's the coach, man? Palm Springs or something,
yes,
right? He went to the Palm Springs.
He's not doing well. Is that correct?
Nah, the coach had a major heart attack.
Did he really? Rich Gilgallen.
Yes.
Great guy.
Rich Gilgallen,
Rich Gilgallen,
star bartender extraordinaire.
Yeah.
For the team, AM 570 back in 1992. But hopefully he's doing better. But last we'd heard he was in the hospital recuperating.
We need to find out how he's doing. He's a good guy.
You ready for the snowstorm, Larry?
I'm just petrified, John. I've got salt. I've got flamethrowers. I've got snow blowers. I'm
ready.
set.
You're ready.
And, you know, I never believe these guys. I never do. But ice, I don't like ice. Snow, you could have 2 foot of snow. Ice is not good. Ice, I fell and cracked my head one time on the ice. Ended up in the hospital. Took about 9 stitches above the left eye. I took just a header right on the ground.
That wasn't that long ago either, was it?
No, that was the Super Bowl last year. That was on top of my head. This is many years ago. It's about 20 years ago. I fell in a gas station of all places. It was an ugly scene, John.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because I don't know if you've ever wondered, but and I actually saw a truck today. But, you're driving down the road and you see all these lines in the road and you kind of scratch your head going, what's that? Yeah. Well, I did a little homework on it, and that is brine. But do you know how it works? You know what the purpose of it is?
What, to melt the snow? Or
yeah, exactly.
It reacts somehow.
But the whole, go ahead.
I don't know.
I don't want to steal it from you because I could see it going
because I seen those on me there. I thought it was a leaky truck in front of me one day, but they're actually putting some kind of liquid down from the snow.
It's a salt brine, basically. What happens is when snow first comes down, it'll keep it from freezing, and in other words, and sticking, and the next thing you know, you have a coat of packed snow on the road. So this keeps it liquid until there's enough snow that stacks up that then the trucks can come along and push the snow off the road. If you remember years ago, a lot of times, particularly out where I grew up, and I don't know how far to go back and how long they've been using this process, but the snow, a road would get snowpacked, and once a road gets snowpacked, then all of a sudden you clearly lose control. It's much easier to lose control. That's my kind of part of it is actual factual is what I'm saying. The other part, I'm just figuring that's got to be what it's for, is to make sure that the trucks can actually get the snow off the road at some point. Which reminds me of this, growing up in Kansas, in rural Kansas, I considered myself at one time probably in the NASCAR, if you went NASCAR, which we're going to talk about in a little bit just because of what Coach Joe did down in Daytona, but I was probably one of the top snow mud drivers, at least in Kansas. I think I could have won a lot of events.
You're self-proclaimed as the
I'm
best?
self-proclaimed, of course.
Okay.
Of course. I very rarely, unless I've been in the bar for about 6 hours, brag about myself. But I don't have a problem doing it completely sober. When it comes to driving in mud and snow, I'm the guy you want to be riding.
I don't know. I'm pretty good, man.
Okay,
I'm self-proclaimed great. But
I figured you might say that.
I'm pretty
but you
good.
grew up in the city. How could you say that?
Oh, come on, man. You got that big expedition. You pop that thing into 4-wheel drive, no problem. People here are soft, John. I can do a daily show here, and people don't show up half the time. On the threat of snow, they don't show up.
Okay, we're talking about two different ball games here.
I'm talking about Kansas snow. Kansas
talking about snow where you got to know is that drift so deep I can't get through it, and if I do, how do I back out of it?
I don't know about that.
Exactly. No. I'm talking about man for all seasons here.
Well, anyway, that brings us to the story we're going to do. We're all over the place.
Oh, you can go ahead, jumping around.
Do you want to jump around and do this real quick? Because you sent me a note about a guy named Hugh Herr. You saw this on Real Sports, the Bionic Man.
He literally is.
And why don't you tell this story?
Well, watching TV the other night, Real Sports comes on, and I'm not paying a whole lot of attention. But what's her name? Soledad O'Brien, I believe, is her name. She was the interviewer. And it's the oddest thing, really, when you think about it. Here was this young kid. He started rock climbing at age 11. That's all he wanted to do. He says, you read the article, that when it came to actual academics, he could care less. And he certainly wasn't because he didn't have the intelligence. It's just he had no interest in it. He couldn't, if you told him what's 10% of 100, he couldn't tell you the answer when he graduated from high school.
What is 10% of 100?
Okay. Well,
$10.
Of $100.
10% is $10.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I thought it was so obvious that we didn't need to answer.
Sorry. I haven't had a math course since the late 70s.
Okay. Well, anyway, now that you've derailed my thought. Anyway, his parents were people who loved the outdoors, or somebody did, and they would go out west and they would climb, hike and do all this stuff. So he fell in love with nature, and and at age 11 he started rock climbing, and he was a prodigy, really, a rock climbing prodigy, to where he was doing stuff that only adults could do at that age, and by the time he was 15, he was doing stuff that adults couldn't do. He was unique. So him and his friend decided to take a little trip to Mount Washington in New Hampshire, which has got some of the brutalest weather on the East Coast and maybe in the country when you get finally up to the summit. I mean, that can be the coldest spot in the country on any given day. Plus the unpredictability of the weather, not unlike Everest, but I don't want to compare it with Everest because they're not the same. Anyway, they get up there, they got, they a little bit full of themselves, I suppose, and they're not really buttoned down and well prepared. And so they get up there and they get turned around and they end up going down they think they're going to go back down, descend back down to their cars. They find out they've went the wrong way, and now they're in the wilderness in, I don't want to say zero, but certainly sub-freezing conditions. And they don't have anything but the clothes on their back, basically. They left a backpack and all this stuff back in the car because they wanted to cut down on their weight. They're out there. They're stranded for 3 or 4 days. I think it was the 4th day.
And Hugh Herr had to walk through a pond.
Well, he fell through. He fell through ice
in the only clothes he had,
right?
And continued walking to try to find try to get out of there.
Correct.
And it becomes tragic.
Yeah, what happened was up to his knee, I believe, that he actually fell in and soaked, his lower legs.
Yeah.
And now in that kind of weather, obviously with water and who knows what kind of climbing gear they had back in the 80s. I mean, if he was wearing cotton, trust me when I say that just sucks the moisture, the heat right out of your leg. Anyway, they get out there. Finally, a rescue crew shows up and they bring him out of there. Well, his lower legs are so damaged by frostbite, they have to be amputated.
And his buddy had fingers and a foot amputated as well.
And so it turns out that all of a sudden, this guy that all he wanted to do is rock climb, he learns from the doctor, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be able to drive a car. I want to be able to rock climb. And there's one other thing I can't think of off the top of my head. But he says, well, you're going to be able to drive a car, but that's about the extent of it. Forget about rock climbing. Well, Hugh Herr did not take that to heart because right away his brain started working on what he could do to somehow develop some prosthesis that would actually enable him to get, and he did. He took the current things that were available, he modified them, and was able to, and started, I think within a year, was back rock climbing.
He's a genius.
I think you have to say that.
He's a genius.
I think you have to say that.
And the rest of the story coming up in a second, as we remind you, a little tip, if you need mortgage, use the pros at McLean Mortgage. Buying a home can be stressful, filled with hassles. The experts at McLean Mortgage understand what important financial investment your home is, and they'll seamlessly guide you through the process to successfully own a home. Smooth, amazing, easy, professional, first rate. Some of the reviews from the tens of thousands of homeowners. Trust McLean Mortgage. Check them out, McLeanMortgage.com. Lending as it should be.
Now, really listen to what I'm about to tell you, because with cold weather, you got to go into combat mode. And O'Connor Plumbing wants to help. See, low temperatures can cause pipes to freeze or crack. Disaster. Even a small ice blockage leads to pressure buildup in other pipes, and that could further damage your home's entire plumbing system. So during this cold weather, let your faucets drip slowly when cold hits, and call O'Connor immediately if you notice consistently low water pressure in cold weather. Don't forget, O'Connor Plumbing is here for you with 24/7 emergency service. Call 1-833-RIGGO-44.
All right, picking up the story on Hugh Herr. Riggo, you've taken us to, I think, where it really gets interesting. It goes way over my head. You're talking about a rock climber who was a prodigy, ends up in a horrible disaster, loses his legs, decides he's going to do something about it. What does he do?
Well, he goes to a local, I want to say, community college he grew up in Pennsylvania. I think actually over here in Lancaster was where his family was, and I'm assuming the college was somewhere around that. And I guess the professor that had him there, he would call his professor in the middle of the night with an idea. He'd get up on the chalkboard and he would crush the chalk. He was just so focused and so energetic about trying to figure this out. From there, he ends up being the only kid from this particular school to get into MIT. At MIT, he gets his graduate degree, and then he goes on to Harvard, I think it was, and got his PhD. Comes back to MIT, develops this group of people, and they start working on, I guess you want to call it biomechanics, or it's complicated from what they do. But the long story short of this is, during this interview you see on Real Sports, is you see him walking around the whole time. He's wearing a suit, but he's got his suit pants rolled up all the way past his knee, and literally he looks like a transformer. It is titanium, and I'm sure some carbon composite.
And the walk is natural.
And you can't, if he rolls the pants down, you don't see anything.
And the ankle has 3 computers in it, all kinds of different electronics in it. And it's a smooth functioning ankle. I think I read, and I'm not sure, it just is so incredible. First thing they had was a fully functional electronic knee, I believe is what they said.
Yeah,
and then the story goes on to say one of the goals is to have a synthetic spine developed.
It just goes on and on.
Oh my gosh!
So much so that he mentioned that, I believe he talked about curing paralysis.
Yes,
which is something with the Nick Bonaconnie. I don't know if you've seen that HBO special that they had this past week. That his son Mark was the one who's been paralyzed for over 20 years now.
He got hurt at the Citadel,
and that there's perhaps a chance that Hugh Herr and his crew are working on the technology to actually people. And he called it. He referred to that as low-hanging fruit. Now that may be a little bravado, but he doesn't come across like that guy. He seems what he says. He means what he says, and he says what he means.
Now we have a soundbite of Hugh Herr that TC sent us from that HBO. Thank the folks at HBO for an outstanding story. They're nobody better than HBO telling these sports stories. Here's a piece of the guy we're talking about, Hugh Herr.
I imagined a future without disability and began striving towards it. There's going to be new sports of people running really fast. And there'll be, power basketball, power swimming, and power climbing, and there'll just be this reinvention of sport that'll be so much fun.
The Terminator.
I'm just thinking we should legalize PEDs. Cut to the chase here, Hugh, but I mean, that's just me speaking, because clearly this would be performance-enhancing equipment. But on an aside, actually it's almost as if Stan Lee's back from the dead, the cartoon guy, that invented all these different seriously, Larry, think about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Man, the suit.
Yeah.
Because he's developing a suit that I think takes, takes all the metabolic body thing out of it, to where, and I'm thinking, well, who would want to use that? Well, I didn't think maybe some soldier that's got a 20-mile hike ahead of him and doesn't want to wear himself out. He puts his suit on and it basically takes him where he's going. I mean, like I said, it really, when you watch this, it stuns you from the fact that you had no idea that what you thought was science fiction is slowly becoming reality.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just crazy.
Oscar, who was the Blade Runner guy who shot his girlfriend? He's in jail now, I think, right? For killing his girlfriend. Yeah, but that was a piece of metal or some kind of carbon fiber that he used because he didn't have legs. This is a different thing.
He was born without legs.
Yeah, these are moving joints, right? These are moving joints, which are actually computers. I mean, I don't know. We probably have to do some type of follow-up on this, because I guarantee you this story is going to catch a lot of attention.
I agree. And here's the thing, though, that I don't think we've really presented in the light that it deserves. And that is, he also befriended, because this guy was at the top. Like I said, he was a prodigy. Herr was a prodigy when it came to rock climbing. So a lot of people knew about him, and it's really kind of word of mouth, because let's face it, it's not the NFL, MLB, but it's a small group of people that know who the greats are. Well, Herr was one of them, and there's another friend, and I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, they became friendly. This guy fell several years back, completely crushed his lower, I want to say, right leg, basically kind of like Herr, from the knee down, or maybe maybe not quite that far down. They developed, not only did they develop an ankle and a lower leg for this friend that fell and crushed his leg, but they also had determined that there would be a certain way to actually surgically remove the leg, where they could still keep some of the muscles and the nerve endings to incorporate into the new lower leg and ankle. Now, here's where it gets this is the part where you have to go, this is bizarre. And this process, you would need somebody from his office to tell you how it works. But my guess is, obviously, what little I know about biology and animals and the way we operate and move our hands and whatever is the thought process that it's electrical impulses that are sent through the body.
Right.
Clearly, there must be some kind of electrical impulse that the brain sends that he is able to receive in this man-made invention, this technology that he's got, and it actually moves the ankle the way that you would if it was your own foot. That's the part. It's where you can meld a machine with the human brain is beyond my comprehension. And it gave an example of it in the story when I watched it on Real Sports. Was that he stepped on a roll of tape like you have maybe before, and you had sticky on one side. Well, it stuck to the foot, and you watch this guy shake the fake foot with his brain to flip off the tape. I mean, it's astounding, Larry. It really is
incredible. Steve Austin, the $6 million man, is
real.
Here.
Is real.
Steve, I thought that was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
The original.
Original Steve Austin you're talking about. I want to talk about Bowman.
Go ahead.
Okay. If you're looking for family-owned and operated heating and AC contractor, Bowman's Heating and AC, the company you're looking for over 30 years. Bowman's has serviced northern Virginia. Bowman's friendly and highly trained technicians specialize in air conditioner and furnace repair. They're fantastic. Call Bowman's Heating and AC. Give them a call, 703-471-0452 to schedule an appointment today. Bowman's Heating and AC, 703-471-0452. And John, helping people improve their lives is what should drive business. That's the belief at Koch Industries, which employs more than 65,000 people across America. The team at Koch works together to meet the world's changing needs in transportation, medical care, water filtration, household goods, energy-efficient building products, and everyday technologies, all while consuming fewer resources. See the innovations firsthand at kochindustries.com. Extreme opportunity to win millions of dollars ahead. The Extreme Million Scratcher could give you $10 million without you having to do anything extreme at all, including go through 6-foot snow drifts in Kansas. The game is a $10 million top prize, $1 million second prize, over $256 million in total prizes. If you have a non-winning ticket, you can enter the second chance drawing in April for a $1 million top prize. Check it out, the Virginia Lottery.
Who's bored? Who's broke? And who's back?
I wanted to always see the redwoods. I wanted to see the Rocky Mountains. I wanted to see the Painted Desert, the Petrified Forest, the Grand Canyon. That was like the land that I always wanted to go to.
John Riggins.
It never gets old.
Who did I tell that to? Where'd you lift that from?
Football Life.
Oh, it was a Football Life.
Football Life. And I'll tell you somebody else who was in your Football Life. He figures prominently. His name is Joe Gibbs. And, John, we have two things left on our agenda, the AAF and Joe Gibbs. And it might be a good idea to do the AAF now because I understand they're low on money. But
Got an infusion. Breaking news.
I saw the guy from Carolina put 250 million in.
Let's get into it. The AAF.
The AAF? I can't really say a whole lot about it. I watched the game on the opening weekend. I didn't watch the whole game. I watched a little bit of it. And I don't know what to make of it at this point. Other than I thought, because of the NFL, I thought, well, they got some rule changes there that I thought were pretty interesting, and that really revolves around the kickoff, where they've eliminated the kickoff.
Right.
And
PATs, same thing. I think you can take the ball on you can take the ball instead of an onside kick. You can take the ball at your own 28-yard line. You've got a 4th and 12.
Yeah, in other words, if you got one chance to make 12 yards, and if you do, then you get a set of first downs?
Then you get the ball instead of trying an onside kick. They're eliminating the kicker.
Yeah.
Completely eliminating the kicker.
So there is no kicking. You're right.
And I think
so there's no field goal.
They eliminated last week's payroll, too. I think.
That's the big...
Cash infusion.
Who infused the cash?
That sounds like the old...
This is breaking news. Literally came out last night, reported by The Athletic.
Yes.
The Carolina Hurricanes, the NHL franchise, Tom Dundon stepped up and made a $250 million investment. So this was to head off of them potentially missing payroll.
Right.
The second week.
Right. And he's taking over the league, Todd.
Well, yeah, he's the he's the new league chairman now. So
yes, he's going to get a team. Ebersol and Polian are probably going to be out as a result of this, and they're only 2 weeks in. In Memphis, they had 11,000 fans show up. In San Antonio, 29,000. I mean,
how many times have we seen this?
You can't do it. And once baseball kicks in, John, is anybody going to pay attention to this?
Well, here's what kind of makes me scratch my head is if this doesn't sound like the old WFL, which started back in the early 70s, I think 74 was when that got kicked around because it was right after the Dolphins had won that one Super Bowl, and I believe Larry Zonka and somebody else defected to that for a year.
Zonka, right?
And then you had the USFL, which was around at about the time the Redskins won that first Super Bowl. I believe that came out.
Yeah.
And then you had the XFL, which was about, believe it or not, well over 10 years ago with Vince McMahon and Charlie Ebersol's dad, Dick Ebersol, through NBC. You had that. And, of course, that's supposed to come out in a year. So my question is this. The NFL Network is broadcasting some of the games. And I'm wondering, there must be, in your opinion, because I don't know what, in the old days, I remember the NFL wasn't real big on these upstart football leagues. So nowadays I'm going, well, that doesn't seem to be the case. But who knows what's going to happen?
You make a good point. I'm wondering myself. I don't know what maybe there's a financial connection of some kind that we don't know. But in trying to watch it, to see Steve Spurrier walking out there like Pat Malley, I mean, it's tough. To see some of these guys.
Pat Malley?
He's our engineer. He's got a bad hip. He has a hard time walking a little bit. He's our radio engineer. That's an inside joke.
So the ball coach has got a little hitch in his gait?
He's got a little hitch in his gait. And you know what? I was hoping that maybe a couple of players might shine, and you might see a couple of guys who might slide over and get in the NFL. Nick Novak was the special teams player of the week after week 1. Former Redskins kicker.
He was I thought he was a kicker.
I don't know.
What does a kicker do?
I get field goals, though.
That's it?
Field goals are still in the game.
So they're field goals.
But they're kind of phasing the kicker out.
Somebody tried an 83-yard field goal last week.
Really? They came up short?
An 83? Are you serious?
Yeah.
83 yards?
Yeah.
What did he do? Put it on a tee, not where somebody, like a kickoff?
He has strong wind behind him, John.
They got all kinds
worth a shot.
Well, that's possible. I suppose that's possible.
All right, here's what I want to do, because we got to get this in today. Joe Gibbs and Denny Hamlin won the Daytona 500. What a win. Emotional. John, we were at the ceremony for JD, and Coach Gibbs has referenced that ceremony many, many times. It really was life-altering to some people. The coach had this to say, though, and I want your reaction. A lot of people talking about this. He says, it's the most emotional and biggest win I've ever had in my life in anything. And so people want to say, well, that's bigger than the Super Bowl. I think the circumstance surrounding the passing of his son made it so. Period.
Well, exactly. I mean, I read this years ago, and hopefully none of us will ever have to experience it, but they say losing an adult child is the most painful thing a parent can go through. I can't imagine that it being any worse than losing a young child, say a 4 or 5, 6-year-old child. But this is what I've been told. And they, you know, the experience of what, you know, Coach Gibbs and his family went through with JD's, you know, demise, which happened over a period, I'm going to guess 3, maybe 4 years, and something that every day you saw a little bit less of who he used to be. I mean, I'm sure in ways he was still expressing, even if it was only his eyes, that he was still there. But clearly the body was starting to deteriorate. And then finally, I mean, you never know. I mean, is it a blessing finally that the Lord takes him? And I think that's the way Joe looks at all this, because he is so religious. But clearly, I get that 100% based on what they've been through. It's I don't want to say it's divine intervention, but it's almost with that happening and the way it happened with Hamlin and the number 11 car, which was JD's number. I mean, it's really, if you don't believe, it's kind of like you start going, well, maybe I ought to start thinking about this.
And he discovered Denny Hamlin, and he went to Joe and said, we got to sign this kid out of Virginia. And look at him now. Denny wins twice. Here's some comments after the win.
Well, he's not the kid from Manassas, is he?
He was running at Manassas. I think he's a little closer to Richmond where he grew up, but he was doing all the Virginia short track circuits, and JD discovered Denny Hamlin, and he's part of the FedEx team and the number 11. Here's some of the comments after the win in Daytona.
Denny, all of these fans have stood here for a long time waiting to see this moment, but you just pointed at that sticker. What does JD Gibbs mean to you in this event?
The whole family. They just they've done so much for me over the course of my career. It's just this one's for JD. We're desperately going to miss him the rest of our lives, but his legacy still lives on through Joe Gibbs Racing, and proud to do this for them.
What happened here is really unreal, and I'm just thrilled. I think JD had the best view of everything.
You know, you can say what you want about Joe, Coach Joe. He is the face of a lot of things. Certainly he's the face of Joe Gibbs Racing. But you do, and I think Joe would be the first one to admit this, that JD was really the guy behind the scenes. You might say Joe was a face man, and JD was the backbone of Joe Gibbs Racing.
He built the race team, and Coach was here coaching.
Exactly. He was the front team. He went down and started tying
sponsorships and all. But JD built the organization. Now Coy, and it was really
Coy's coming.
I don't know if you saw some of the highlights of. There was a couple of young kids. I don't say young kids. Kids maybe in their early 20s or maybe their teens that were in the pits hugging Coach Gibbs. It was JD's kids, the ones that spoke at the funeral.
Right. Yeah.
So
close bond there, very close bond.
More power to him, and I buy it. I buy what Coach Gibbs said. I mean, that's about as emotional situation as you're ever going to see, and they won.
They did. Congratulations to Coach and the racing team.
Final word coming up here.
Sports fans of all kinds have a new place to connect. Asbury Methodist Village. You have a competitive spirit or just like to be active, Asbury has everything you need. Tennis and bocce ball courts, a fitness center and pool. Plus, whatever team you root for, you'll find kindred spirits at Asbury. Come for a tour and check out everything Montgomery County's leading senior living community has to offer. Visit AsburyMethodistVillage.org to schedule a tour and find more information on our services and top-notch reputation. That's AsburyMethodistVillage.org. Asbury is an equal opportunity housing provider.
Your heart works hard, and sometimes its parts need repair. That's what we do at Innova's Structural Heart Program in Fairfax. With outcomes that exceed the national average, we're a leader in both minimally invasive repair techniques and surgery to address heart valve disease. Give your heart the benefit of care from Innova Heart and Vascular Institute. Find an Innova physician by visiting innovaheart.org/valve. Innova. Join the future of health.
Gearing up for game day? Your local Safeway has everything you need for the perfect tailgating or home gating party. Pick up all your favorites like wings, chips and dips, brats, burgers, beverages, and pizza. Stop by the deli to pick up fresh fried chicken or the produce department for a variety of party trays. Head on over to your local Safeway and pick up everyone's favorites. Safeway, the official supermarket of the Washington Redskins.
Who sat here? Your student? A peer? Your best friend? What did they grow up to be? A scientist? A nurse? An entertainer? Did you know it back then that they were made to stand out? Celebrate the extraordinary people made in Virginia Public Schools. Nominate a public school graduate for the Virginia Lottery's Made in Virginia Award. Details at madeinvirginia.com. Deadline October 12th. The Virginia Lottery, $9 billion to education, 30 years of fun.
All right, here's the final words. Larry and me, tomorrow afternoon, after about 10 inches of snow, I'm going to find a road out here somewhere.
What are you driving?
We're going to,
What are you driving?
I'll drive your car. We'll let you drive and take it through the course, and then I'll drive, and I'll jump in the same car. We're definitely going to be on a level playing field here.
I'll do it, man. The Range Rover I got right now is pretty darn good in the snow, but nothing like that Expedition. That Expedition was tall. It was powerful. Even that Snowmageddon, it didn't stop me. Didn't stop, but I'm not talking about a Kansas snowdrift. I'm talking about a couple feet here, okay?
Well, first of all, I don't think we're going to get that much. I hope we do in a way.
We're not going to get that much.
I hate to say this, but I started planning last night with my daughter Coco because I take her to school in the morning. I said, dude, it looks good for tomorrow. I think there's no school tomorrow and probably a late opening on Thursday. So I'm going, you and me, we're sleeping in, baby. So see you next week for episode 27. Thank you for joining us today.